Hi, everybody, and welcome. Hey, please drop your name in and the organization in the chat so we can see who's joining us today. And we'll give everybody else joining just a couple more minutes. Happy to see some familiar names. Good to see you guys. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're excited to have you here and hope this session helps you gain a better understanding of our grant application process. Our goal is to walk you through the key steps and answer any questions you may have so you feel confident and ready to submit your application. My name is Meg Meredith, Grants and Shelter Education Manager here at PEDIGREE Foundation, and joining me today is Deb Fair, our Executive Director, and Dr. Tiffany Beer, our Grant Committee Chair. Now let's briefly talk about what our agenda will cover today. We'll go through a quick welcome with Deb. We'll talk about the timeline for our annual grants, updates for the application process in 2025. We'll walk through the grant offerings. We'll talk about the grant narrative sections and how we evaluate those. We'll also go through the on-site audit process for both shelters and rescues. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A for any questions you may have about the process. Now I'll turn it over to Deb to tell us a bit more about the foundation and our purpose.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Fair with the PEDIGREE Foundation, and many of you may be familiar with our organization, but those of you that are not, I thought it'd be great to give you a brief overview. So we were established in 2008 as a separate 501c3 dedicated to helping more dogs get adopted. We have a vision where we see a day where all dogs are safe, secure, fed well, cared for, and loved. But our mission is this: supporting 501c3 organizations working to end pet homelessness by helping more dogs in need find loving homes. So our impact last year, I just wanted to go through this. We have provided, since 2008, 6,300 grants to shelters and rescues across the country, helping nearly 900,000 dogs and giving $14 million in grant funding. We do this through our grants programs, but we also have leaned into best practice webinars, which Meg Meredith leads as part of our Shelter Education Manager. So we've brought to you the Adoption Superhighway Toolkit, Back to Bark to Basics, which is also a cool toolkit that looks at some adoption opportunities and events that other shelters and rescues have shared as best practices. So we are leaning into those more as resources for you all, and we hear from you through our Shelter Advisory Council how we can have a greater impact by providing those resources for you to help increase dog adoption. But we've also done this through thought leadership. We have a Shelter Advisory Council that meets with us on a quarterly basis, and we like to get insights of what's happening out there in the field, what is working, what is not working, how can we look to provide more resources to help you increase adoption. And we look at collaborative partnerships as well. So we partner with other like-minded organizations like Petco Love, Maddie's Fund, Adopt a Pet, and looking at ways that we can increase helping more dogs. And we have a cool initiative that's going to be coming up in June. I'm not going to talk about it early right now, but I will say that we're going to lean into foster, because we have heard from our Shelter Advisory Council that one way to help reduce length of stay is by leaning into foster. So we're looking at a cool partnership together to do so. And then we have this Brilliant Dogs and Data initiative that we've done with Shelter Animals Count, where we've brought data on a quarterly basis, which we will this year do so, to that looks at the data that you guys are providing that might help us kind of look at other insights, other areas of focus, other programs, other ways that we can learn together and lean into initiatives to help increase adoption. So those are the key areas that we focus on: grants, best practices, and thought leaderships to provide you all with resources. And so what I'm going to do right now is turn it over to Meg. She's going to go into the areas of focus for next year. You did hear me talk about foster because we do believe that's a huge opportunity for all of us to work together. We can't do this without all of you, so we really appreciate the work that you guys do each and every day. So thank you.
Thanks, Deb, so much. And hey, I'm going to stop and put a plug in for our newest Foster Toolkit. It's Foster and Community Engagement. We're going to have another webinar on that. That toolkit will launch and we'll have a webinar on it March 13th at 1 p.m. So take a look at our website if you want to register for that. Okay, grant cycle. So here's the timeline for our annual grant cycle. We opened up February 28th, so last Friday, and we're going to close April 13th. We'll start the review process in April, late April and May. June and July will be site audits, and then August and September we'll do award notifications. Now, one big change we made this year was migrating to an upgraded platform for a new applicant experience. I want to call it a few things here as you begin to apply. Most applicants will need to create a new login for Blackbaud, and I'll show you how to do that on the next slide. But most applicants, unless you already have a Blackbaud ID, will need to create a new one. So once you start an application, whether that's Dogs Rule or program development, you'll want to bookmark this link here, and that will give you access to all your applications that you have in progress and all the requirement forms associated with those applications. Also put in the no reply at yourcause.com to your safe sender list. This will allow me to communicate with you through Blackbaud during the application process. And then finally, the old portal that we used to use, so we've used it for many years now, so a lot of you are familiar with that, that will be going away. That's actually sunsetting in August of this year. So what I want you to do, use the link that I provided there, go into that link and download any of your applications, download any of the reporting that you want, so you have that going forward. Okay, and here's kind of just a brief screenshot of what that new application portal looks like. It's very clean, should be really user-friendly. And what you'll want to do here is go to the Create Account when you go in to apply for the first time, and then it'll take you into that application, the application quiz, etc. If you have any trouble, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll handle it together. Okay, now to call out a few of the big guideline reminders. Again, we will only be funding programs in the following categories: foster, behavior, and transport. And here's what I really want to highlight this year in our categories. Foster programs. We will place special focus on foster programs this year in an effort to help reduce length of stay. So we could potentially see more grants offered in the fostering programming section. We'll also be doing, just like we did last year, behavior programs, where we'll look at both in-shelter and post-adoption behavior support programs. And then with our transport programs, we'll look to focus in on programs that go directly into foster or forever homes. And just like last year, I just want to always bring it up. Just a reminder to those of you that applied for programs in the past, that includes some type of medical or veterinary care. We're not covering any of those expenses again this year. So just keep that in your back pocket. Okay, here are the grants that we're offering in 2025. dogs rule, and program development. But what I wanted to do was just also tell you about our disaster relief grants because they're offered on a year-round basis. Just note that this year they will be specifically for those of you that experienced a natural disaster or helping with a natural disaster. Okay, I know in the past we did some emergency care grants, but this year we're focusing in on just natural disaster. Okay, let's jump into the first grant type. And this is probably the most competitive grant type that we have. It's a 2-year grant, $50,000 each year for $100,000 total. There's one grant available in 2025 for an innovative initiative that can serve as a best practice for other shelters and rescues. Note that we're still using those same categories: foster, transporter, behavior, and third-party financial statements, audited financial statements will be required for this grant, along with other requirements, so such as speaking engagements and creation of a toolkit. Please remember, I just want to call it out, our full grant guidelines are on our website. Feel free to access that at any time. If you have questions, reach out to myself, Dr. Tiffany. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Now, our program development grants. These are our most popular grants by far. They range from 10 to 15,000. Again, it's focusing on those programs, creating a program or enhancing an existing program around foster behavior and transport, but unaudited financial statements are accepted here. And then we will consider some capital project funding if it's in those categories of transport, posture, and behavior. Again, go out, look on the guidelines, and make sure that you meet all those requirements before applying for a grant.
And just remember too, I know I saw it last year. We are doing those categories of foster behavior or transport. You don't have to do all three
Right.
in one application, right? You can do just one, because I know there were some folks that got confused and tried to cover all three in their grant application. You don't have to do that. It just has to be at least one of those three.
Thanks, Dr. Tiffany. Okay, this is the most important part, and I think where we're going to spend a lot of our time today. So it's building your grant narrative. The program narrative is your chance to present the program that you want funded. So today we'll focus on exactly what we're looking for in this narrative and how we'll be evaluating it. As we go through, you'll see each of the following sections in the program description of the application. And Dr. Tiffany, I know you've reviewed thousands of these, so just jump in with any insights you can offer. All right. So program section, probably the most important section, right? We want to hear about your program here. Clearly describe the program's objectives and how it addresses a specific need in your shelter or rescue. So perhaps you're thinking about creating a post-adoption behavior program because your team has identified an increase in returns recently due to behavior issues. Or you want to hire a foster coordinator because you're expanding your foster program. Go through the strategy with us, how you're going to do it, what resources you need, and then highlight what the benefits to your organization are going to be. So specifically, maybe you want to say, I want to increase my foster families from 50 to 100. How are you going to achieve that? We'll dive into the goals section next. So this goes back to having specific goals with measurable metrics. Goals should be clearly defined and measurable. So include those specific metrics. So maybe you're moving from transporting 30 dogs a month to 60 dogs a month. You want to go through and talk about how you're going to measure your success. So perhaps you're meeting with your team weekly to assess what's working in your program, what's not, and maybe you're making adjustments as needed. So just make sure that you're providing a clear framework of how you're really looking at your program's impact.
And make sure too, when you have these metrics, that those metrics are very clearly connected to what you've said the program is that you're going to develop. So, whatever you decide on your program and what your strategy is, those metrics should be very clearly linked to show how successful that program is.
It's a great point. Okay, this next one, community engagement. And I want to kind of dive a little bit more into this one because I know we have questions around it. So we, as a board, and as, a grant committee, and then as my grant manager, as we talk to shelters and rescues across the country, we know that when a community actively engages with their local animal shelter or rescue, pets tend to thrive and have better outcomes. So when we look at something like community engagement, I'm looking for you to describe your organization's partnerships with businesses, other nonprofits. Maybe you're transporting with another shelter from the South, other community-based organizations. How does your organization strengthen your impact through collaboration? So you may even want to talk about like your corporate partners. So like who's providing you in-kind support, anything like that to help really showcase how involved you are in your community. Same goes for this board and volunteer engagement. Just look at it from an internal perspective. Really describe the ways that your board members and volunteers support your organization. How many hours your volunteers are giving? Are your board members meeting once a quarter to talk about strategy? Are they donating to your organization? Those types of things are the things we want to see as we look at the support that's coming from inside your organization. Now, on sustainability, our hope that these programs, whether you're just beginning one or you're expanding one, continue for a long time and that they last. So what we'd like you to do is think about in the future how this grant program will continue after the grant period. You can include other grants that you're getting. You can talk about maybe some email campaigns that you have around the program. Maybe you're taking a portion of your gala or your run revenue to put toward the program. Just talk about how you think you'll be able to support it in the future. And finally, the budget. Okay, this one, we're really looking for you to outline how you're using the grant funds. So those of you that are applying for program development, that'll be somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000. Some of you put in there exactly how much you're going to spend, 13,765 and 13 cents. Perfectly fine with me. I want you to tell me where those monies are going to go. Be clear. Make sure it links back into your program. If you want to identify if it's a staff resource, foster supplies, training materials, and then think about it, if you're doing a program development, you making sure you allocate those funds, and same for Dog's Rule. You have 50,000 to allocate for 1 year and 50,000 to allocate for another year. I want to see very clearly how those funds are being used in your program. And so if you need a budget template, please reach out to me. I created one a couple years ago. If you're not sure where to start, happy to send that to you. So just reach out to me and I'll send that over to you. Okay, virtual audits or on-site audits. And we're really back into on-site audits with COVID kind of hopefully in the background. And what I'll tell you here is we really look forward to coming out and seeing your shelter, your rescue, the community that you're serving, and the staff and volunteers that are all involved in your programs. And we'll come out typically when you're a finalist, we'll be reaching out to you to facilitate a site audit visit. And we totally recognize that some shelters and rescues operate with physical facilities and others function through foster homes. We can totally we'll work to accommodate both. Don't worry about that. And then, so what we wanted to do here was just give you some ideas of what's in those audits. So some of the categories may include, so animal shelter, exterior grounds, or maybe that's foster home, how safe it is, etc. Animal care areas and procedures, veterinary services, if that's applicable to you. If not, no worries. We just move along in our audit process. The adoption procedures, we'll talk about that, what you've got in place. We'll talk about employee and volunteer practices. So these are just a few of the things. Like I said, our auditors always look forward to coming out, hearing more about your programs and meeting you because you do so much in the lives of these pets. Okay, so I'm wrapping it up so that we have time for questions. What's next? Just make sure that you have highlighted April 13th as the deadline. Our award notifications again will be made in August and September, and then funds will be dispersed in October or November. Now, time for questions. If you will use the chat function, we will try to go through these together, Dr. Tiffany and I, and we'll just start with the ones that we get first.
I have one
Okay.
that's from Julie. You state that grants will not cover medical expenses, but could funds be used for monthly clinic setup specifically for foster dogs?
If you're looking to expand, and Julie, we can talk about that more offline. What we're looking for is if you do have specific medical costs associated with the program, if it's a small cost or a small piece of that grant funding, we can look at that. What we're not looking to do is cover $15,000 worth of for one dog surgery, that type of thing. So reach out to me and we'll talk more about that offline, but we're looking to cover a small portion of expense through medical.
I'll cover this one, even though I've already answered it in the chat, but it says I am unable to type my chat, and I know a couple of you are having that issue, so sorry.
Sorry.
But are we able to apply for both grants, or are we limited to only one? And I typed in an answer that, yeah, you can apply for both. You will only be able to win one. So if you get a dog's rule and a program development, I'm pretty sure you'd probably want that dog's rule one. So what you can only win one, but yeah, absolutely apply for both.
That's right. And if you'll just apply, one application per grant category, right? So one organization can't submit 10 program development. It's not fair to everybody else.
Here's another one. Can you give an example of a type of capital project funding that is related to foster behavior and transport that you might consider?
Oh, sure. So if we look at something we did, and here's another idea, go online, go and look at our past recipients, and it'll tell you a little bit about each of the programs. But one that's coming to mind right off the top of my head is around a behavior program out of Texas, where they created a sensory garden for their pets right outside of the shelter. And so they used some of that funding to build that sensory garden. And so it worked really nicely in with their programming, but what you focus on and what you should talk about is what that programming is doing for those pets and how you'd use that sensory garden to enhance their daily activities.
There's in a couple of this one. April 13th is a Sunday. Does this mean the deadline is actually April 11th?
No, the deadline is April 13th at midnight. So you got through that weekend. That's kind of what I wanted to have because I know a lot of you work full time and then you're coming home doing this on the side. I wanted you to have that weekend for that last deadline. So we'll really close on April 13th at midnight.
Are the U.S. Virgin Islands eligible?
Yes, you are.
Questions coming in. So
I know.
hold on.
We'll try to get through as many as we can. I tried to leave as much time.
Here's another. Our primary location is located in Mexico. We vet, spay, neuter, and vaccinate each dog before making them adoptable. About 50% of our dogs are adopted from the rescue in Mexico, and another 50% are transported to Arizona, where they live in foster homes. We are an Arizona registered nonprofit, and we have nonprofit status in Mexico as well. Will the fact that our primary operation is in Mexico impact our eligibility? That's a harder one.
That is a harder one. And in most cases in the past, what I've done is as we've gotten requests from transporting from, let's say, Ireland or Mexico, is we haven't allowed that. If your primary operation is in another country, we're really looking to focus here on the U.S. side of our shelters and rescues now. If there's 50% of those pets that will then be coming into the US, we could look at something from a programming perspective around that. You'll want to reach out to me and we'll talk through that to see if we can find something that would work.
Foster Nashville is a nonprofit that exclusively provides crisis foster care for pets when their owners are experiencing a temporary crisis. We are not a shelter or rescue, though we do facilitate adoptions when owners are unable to reclaim. Do we qualify for a program development grant under foster programs?
I know we're specifically looking at shelters and rescues here, and I know that there are some of you that fall kind of in that gray area, but we're really trying to work specifically with shelters and rescues.
Well, this is a good one. How many applications do you receive for the grants and how many are actually awarded?
So typically, just depending on the year, because I feel like we get less when there's more going on outside in our communities, we'll see somewhere between 350 to 450 applications. You know, we give out one dog's rule, and then we'll give out somewhere between 35 to 45 to 50 maybe this year of the program development grants. So you're looking really around 10 to 15% of the grants that, you know, that the applications that apply get a grant.
Is it helpful to demonstrate funds that will put into the program in addition to the requested grant funds? So I think this is that other funding for the program. Or should this be a program that cannot be funded without receiving grant funds?
Oh, no. So if you have, so say, for example, you've got a foster program and you've got not only us, but you maybe have Petco or another big funder, or maybe you have some capital campaigns or operational funds that you've already allocated to this. What's helpful for us to see is that program budget. So maybe it's let's say it's $100,000 budget. And then where we come in at 15,000, we want to see exactly where those funds are going, but you can totally fund the rest of that programming through different revenue streams. Okay, here's another one. Do we need to send in a separate application if we would like to submit for foster and behavior? Okay, you just did that one.
Yeah, so for that one, if they're two completely different programs, I would say go do them separately. But if they're just two sections of the same program, you can absolutely do them together.
Yeah, I've got a spot in the application that actually lets you, if you're doing two of the categories together, that actually lets you, choose both of them, and that way then you can talk to that. Just make sure, as you add programs and as you're talking about multiple things, make sure to always tie it together really well for these reviewers so they understand what's happening in your application. Is there someone we can contact to confirm whether our intended application qualifies? Yes, I've got my name and my email here. Please reach out to me. Happy to look at your set of circumstances and let you know up front. The last thing I want you all to do with as much as you've got on your plate is filling something out that then, you're not eligible for. So please reach out to me, ask me questions. Happy to walk through some of those scenarios with you.
We are nonprofit, but would work directly with shelters for our project goals. Would we qualify?
We are a nonprofit,
but would work directly with shelters for our project goals. Would we qualify? I assume they're not a shelter, but they work with shelters.
Yeah. Are you maybe their friends of or a humane society that's in the area? So we'll want to look at that specifically, because I know our applications do allow for like a friends of, let's say, Metro Animal Care and Control to apply on behalf of Metro Animal Care and Control. So we let them do that, and we let, municipal shelters that do have those relationships with 501c3s apply. But if you are talking more broadly, let's just talk about it to make sure that makes sense.
Someone just posted a question about only seeing our name and not our email. If you look on the screen right now, and this will be in the recording that will go on our site, there's email addresses for both Meg and myself, so you can contact us through email that way.
And I'll go ahead and put it in chat as well, so that.
Does transport funding have to be used toward 8 organizations that only transport between other foster and rescue shelters, or could it be used toward purchase of a van, for example, for one shelter?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that's definitely included in this. If you maybe are a shelter that has just one receiving or a destination or one receiving, one-on-one relationship with someone, that's perfectly fine too if you want to talk through that. Just remember, even if you're asking for funding for a person, for a staff resource, or for a van, this application is all about the program. It's all about what you're doing, how unique it is, how you're impacting your shelter and rescue, how you're impacting your community. It's all about the program. So make sure to just weave it all in. Let's see.
So many messages.
Okay.
Is there a timeline that the funding needs to be spent in if you receive a grant?
Okay, yeah, the answer is yes. So what will happen? We'll go through the review process, the site audits, and then around, September, October, I'll be contacting you, letting you know you got the grant, and then there'll be a set of award agreements that we'll talk through. And so that will tell you more about, kind of what the requirements are, what the reporting is, and what we'll look at is you'll receive that funding somewhere in November, usually early December. We'll look for you to spend that funding the next year. So you'll do interim reporting in June of the next year, and you'll do final reporting in January of the following year. So you'll have 1 year to spend those funds. If it's Dogs Rule, you've got your 2 years, right? But for program development, you'll have your 1 year.
Are we able to contact either of you to verify if an idea for a program is eligible?
Please reach out to me. Happy to help. I do a lot of that during this time is, brainstorm, talk about, like I said, go on our website, look at past recipients and the programs that they were awarded. It's helpful in kind of like getting your brain working around maybe what a program could be for your rescue or shelter. Happy to talk through any of that. I'll set up maybe a 30-minute session with those of you that want to do that, and we can talk about.
And you can contact both of us, but
yeah.
Meg is by far going to be your best resource.
Yeah, you're welcome to reach out to Dr. Tiffany too. I just know she's got a lot on her plate.
Can transport foster funds be used in moving animals to a holding station prior to moving on up north to fosters?
Yeah, so maybe you've got like a transport hub or
Uh-huh,
something
yeah.
like that you're using. Yes. So happy to talk more about that if you want to kind of talk about the particulars with me. But just looking at your question, the answer is yes. I think are we out of questions? Wow.
Nope, somebody's got one.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Misty.
All right. We're going to hang out for.
Can the grant help cover payroll?
So what we're looking at there, we're one of the foundations that covers staff resources. And so you'll want to talk to maybe if it's a foster coordinator or transport coordinator, you'll want a behaviorist. We see that a lot.
Yep.
Remember, always weave that back in with your programming, how you'll be using that staff resource towards the program. Okay, just make sure it all ties back in. And yes, we are recording this. We will post it out on the website either tonight or tomorrow, as soon as I can get the recording back. And then you'll be able to access it at any point going forward. But then you can also reach out to either one of us.
I think this is a good one for a little clarification. So if animals are coming to the US from Mexico, did I hear that funding wouldn't be considered? I feel like the earlier question says yes, but an email you read seemed to indicate the answer would be no.
An email you read.
I think the first one where maybe the confusion was their organization was actually located in Mexico. Versus I think bringing dogs in from
Mexico.
If
you've got a primary like your primary operation is in Mexico, we're asking that the primary operation be in the US and be a shelter or a rescue. If you are receiving dogs from a transport that are coming from Mexico or coming from any part of the country, that's eligible for funding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she says thanks.
Okay.
To the Q&A section.
Okay.
Do you focus on organizations with a certain operation revenue amount, for example, 250K?
Yeah, so I want to make it really clear, and that's a great question.
Yeah.
We are focused on the programming. We have seen great programming come from small shelters, rural shelters, and great programming that's coming from someone in a metro area. We focus on the program. We're not looking at the size of your organization from either revenue or intake. Hopefully our hope is that you'd get together, think of some creative ideas, and these would be things that we could share with other rescues and shelters that may not have the resources that you have, or maybe you're doing something different that's really working for your community. That's the stuff I want to share with other people. Maybe they'll take that idea and run. Those are the types of programs that we're looking for.
This one says, are winning programs listed somewhere on your website?
Yeah. If you'll go out to our website, go to the shelters tab, okay, and then scroll down. You can pick, I think we've got everything out there for the last 5 years. Pick a year, whether you're doing Dogs Rule or program development, and then you can go down and see who won the award and for what they won that award for. So like I said, that's a great place to start if you're like, oh, I don't know what to apply for. Great place to think, oh, they're doing this here in order to support more fosters. That'd be a great idea for us. We're really struggling with our capacity lately. Maybe we should look at either, starting our foster program back up again. I know we're hearing a lot of shelters and rescues saying, we're just not seeing the engagement from people, in our community. And so we're trying to figure out ways that we can get back involved in the community. These are some of the ways to do it.
Here's a good one. Does the transport category apply to transfer ins? We are a humane society who regularly intake animals from the municipal shelter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, we want to help, and I know a lot of you help those municipal shelters. I know they need help. And so I'm really grateful for those of you that are working hand in hand and partnering with them in order to help their capacity issues.
I'm glad, Jay, that this has been helpful for you. So thanks for the comment.
Oh, good. Yeah, we want to just say that we're here. We're here, if you've got any other questions, we'll always entertain any of those, or if you want to set up a call with me, happy to do that as well. I don't want to keep you any longer if we're through the presentation and we've answered all the questions. But I do want to just say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing out there. Thank your staff. We just really appreciate and are grateful for what you're doing for pets that don't have homes. And I know it can be a hard these last couple of seasons, huh? They've been really hard, really tough. You've had to pivot a lot. And so, just coming from us, we just so appreciate you and what you do day in and day out. So thanks for that. And we will
Just the last one. I just want to make sure we cover. Yes, the grants can cover payroll or consulting fees. They just make sure you link them back to your program.
Exactly. Perfect. Thanks, everybody. We'll leave you here and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.